Just when you thought you might possibly be done rearranging your pedal board, IK Multimedia releases the TONEX ONE and ruins all your plans. Less than a quarter of the size of the original TONEX pedal, TONEX ONE carries the exact same high-quality presets and tone models while still giving you tons of tweakability right on the pedal itself. IK Multimedia's breakthrough AI machine modeling technology lets you capture your amps or drive pedals with unmatched accuracy, and now it can all fit anywhere on your pedal board. TONEX ONE can be configured in dual mode, which toggles between two different presets, or in STOMP mode, which allows you to use the switch to bypass the effect as you would with a regular STOMP box. TONEX ONE can store 20 different presets on the pedal itself, and you can assign each preset its own color to let you know which preset is active. With a TONEX pedal this size, not only is it a no-brainer amp modeling solution, it's also the perfect way to integrate all your favorite overdrives, distortions, and fuzz captures on one device. The great thing is, TONEX ONE is incredibly affordable, saving you both space on your board and money in the bank. All that to say, if you haven't explored TONEX yet, there is no better time than now to integrate TONEX into your rig. What's up, everybody? Hey, my name is Devin Bumstead, and yes, I'm the self-appointed shepherd of tone. And as funny as that name is, my real purpose is to help the worship guitar community in their heart and their craft. Now, if you're not a part of the worship guitar community, that's totally fine. You'll still get a lot out of this video, so hang in there. But if you're someone who plays guitar in church on Sunday and uses tools like these to do it, then I'd love to invite you to my Instagram, where I chat about all things guitar tone, but also theology of worship and discipleship. I love and have a passion for both. And if you enjoy what you're seeing right here, right now, I'd be honored if you'd like this video and subscribe to this channel. And lastly, all the effects and overdrive and amp presets you're hearing here are available on my website at thetoneshepherd.com. Side note, I've got chapter markers on this video and feel free to use them. There's a lot of content in here, so skip to what you need. So let's talk about this thing. I was a really early adopter of the original TONEX pedal when it first came out, I think in February of last year. And if you follow me on YouTube, you know I rearranged everything on my board to fit two of them on there so I could run stereo amps. And I just remember when the announcement first came out for TONEX, I was excited about it. But honestly, I was a little bummed that it didn't offer stereo amps, like just in one box. And I've always wished since then that they'd release a stereo version. But I've got to say, that the TONEX ONE caught me by surprise. I kind of did expect IK Multimedia at some point, and maybe they still will, I have no clue, to release some bigger pedal and maybe more fully featured, something like an HX Stomp that has more effects and dual amps and stuff like that. But honestly, having played with this for a couple weeks now, I've got to say that this is such a rad alternative that just was not on my radar. And at the price point this is at, I think it's $179 at the time that this video was posted. And the size that this is at, I'm gonna have probably at least 3 of them on my board. And it's gonna allow me to save space for other things. Not like I need other things on my board, it's already overkill, I know. But maybe for more mature people than me, it's going to allow you to downsize and have these incredibly compact boards without compromising amazing tone. So anyway, however you use it, I'm just so stoked for this, and I really do think it's going to change the game again. So let me give you an overview of the features, okay? And I'm just gonna assume that you're somewhat familiar with the big box TONEX pedal just for comparison's sake. Now, the big box TONEX and the TONEX ONE have the exact same tone models and presets. I devoted a whole separate section of this video to that question where I show the sounds of both pedals side by side, so you can skip to that if you want. But yes, the TONEX ONE and the big box TONEX have the exact same tone models and presets. So you're getting the exact same sounds just in a smaller enclosure. So about the I/O, so there's mono in and stereo out. So you can do dual mono or stereo with a TRS split cable, which will make your built-in reverb stereo. And yes, this does have built-in reverb compression, all those things. More on that in a second. Now, regarding MIDI, there's obviously no MIDI on TONEX ONE. The original TONEX had 5-pin MIDI in and MIDI out, which I did make use of. And so I'm gonna miss that a little bit. But I'll have to be honest, and now that I've spent over a year with TONEX, the more I tweaked my own amp presets and kind of found my sound, the less often I was switching amps anyway, especially in a live situation. So I think I'll be able to do without MIDI just fine. Now the other change is instead of a USB-B port, it has a USB-C port on the bottom. And now I don't know if this is a new software thing or not, but with the release of 1.7.0 software, you can have 2 or more TONEX devices connected to the software at the same time and just toggle between them in the LIBRARIAN. Now again, if this isn't news, then I'm late to the game, but if this is a new feature in 1.7, then that's huge and I love it. And especially because it doesn't have MIDI, being able to use a little USB hub under the board and then connect all my TONEX pedals together to the software at the same time is just a really convenient way to tweak stuff while I'm in the studio. Now, another word on the USB. The other rad thing is that you can still use TONEX ONE as a USB interface, which is crazy. And when you do, you can record mono or stereo as well. Though there's no external control, you can actually connect headphones to the output of TONEX ONE. And if you're recording direct via USB, you can use the headphones on the output jack for zero latency recording while sending 1 or 2 channels to your DAW. But if you've got 2 of these for stereo amps all connected up to your rig and you need a way to get a headphone connection, something like the Slow Gear stereo headphone amp is such a handy little tool if you're looking both for a way to add headphones to an analog rig while also allowing an auxiliary input. But I digress. Obviously, with TONEX ONE being smaller, you're limited on what parameters you can tweak on the pedal itself. You can always tweak them in the software. But honestly, you'd be surprised what they were able to cram in here. In fact, it's a shorter list to tell you what it can't control than what it can. Now, obviously, I'm comparing this to the big box TONEX, but the only real things you cannot adjust on this is presence or depth, which I'm a little bummed about because I loved using presence and depth to control my tone, but again, you can do that in the software. And there seems to be one less way to control volume. All right, on the original big box TONEX, you had the physical volume knob, then you had model volume by pressing the parameter control, and then you had main volume in the global settings section. So there's 3 ways. On TONEX ONE, you have 2 volume controls. You have a preset volume, which changes the volume per preset, obviously. And then there's also a global volume, which affects every preset on the pedal. So time will tell if this will be an issue or not. But honestly, that's about it for the parameters you can't control. You can control volume, gain, bass, middle, treble, gate, compression, reverb, input trim, global volume, as I mentioned, global cab bypass, all of that right on the pedal itself. And I'm going to show you how to do that in a later section in the video. Obviously, TONEX ONE doesn't have an LCD screen, so instead of text, they offer colors on the micro knobs, which is pretty cool. So there are 20 different colors you can assign to the 20 presets you're allowed to store on the pedal. Which brings us to our next difference. On TONEX ONE, you can have 20 presets stored locally, and on the big box, you can have 150. But come on, honestly, who needs 150 presets? I think 20 is going to be great for most people. Now here's another difference. On the big box, any tweak you made to a preset needed to be saved. in order for it to save. But on TONEX ONE, the way it's set up as an auto-save type device. So any tweak you make is stored automatically, just like an analog pedal. And at least as far as I can tell, there's no way of knowing where the original parameter was. So once you make a tweak, you have to be careful if you want to make an adjustment but need to get back to the original. Of course, you can always re-import the original preset in the software if you need. Now, something everyone is going to be asking themselves, does TONEX ONE sound exactly the same as the big box TONEX? Is there any tonal consequence by shrinking this big box down into this tiny enclosure? Now, I'm not going to get crazy nerdy science on you here, but I do want to just show you an A/B test between these two, and then I also want to show you a quick little null test, playing them both in mono together with polarity in and then with polarity reversed, so you can kind of hear them that way. But I will give one major caveat, and that is the input trim and the main volume is very difficult to match between the big box and TONEX ONE, because on the big box you have a numerical value, and on TONEX ONE you only have the knobs with no indication of exactly where it's set. And so I do know that null tests don't totally work if the gain is not perfectly matched, so it's impossible probably for me to perfectly match them together, but I did the best that I could at getting the volumes as close together as possible and the input trim as close, at least to my ear, as possible so you could hear them. Now, to adjust the main volume and the input trim on TONEX ONE, you're going to hold the Alt button down for 6 seconds. And you'll know that it's in kind of that global configuration mode when the bass and mid knobs change color and the treble knob becomes clear. At least it's clear when you're not playing, because that treble knob is then the input trim knob. And as you play, that LED will turn from clear for no signal to a light green to a bright green to red. That means it's clipping. And so that's how you adjust the input trim. And then the big knob in this setting is your main volume. So what I found out is that for me, these settings right here on TONEX ONE match my big box TONEX with the input trim set at 8.5 and the main volume set at 0. And then to exit out of the global mode, just press the Alt button again. So here's the two side by side. I'm gonna A/B them back and forth and just let you hear them and see what you think. Now, I don't know about you, but to me, those sound pretty much exactly the same, and that's a really encouraging thing. But let's get down to a little bit more detail. So for this test, instead of having an A/B switch, I have a buffered splitter. So my guitar signal is being evenly split into the TONEX ONE and big box TONEX accordingly, and then going into separate channels in my DAW, and you can see those based on those labels right there. And so together they sound like this. So you can see that the volumes are pretty much matched exactly. The gain is as close as I can get it to being matched. Let me show you that again. So you see the metering reaches about the exact same peak every time. Now, I don't know about you in your listening environment right now, but for me, playing that example, I could hear a little bit of comb filtering, which means most likely that one of these is slightly delayed from the other one. Every digital effect has a little bit of latency to it, so it's likely that one of these has more latency than the other. Now, in a perfect world, if we were comparing two identical products next to each other, I could reverse the polarity on my Daiso Plus, and those two signals would completely cancel each other out. There would be no sound whatsoever. Now, Charlie at Pinstripes Pedals made this little custom Daiso box for me as we're kind of working on something. And this switch reverses the polarity. So green is kind of the normal in polarity, and then red reverses that polarity. So if these two sounds were exactly the same with no differences whatsoever, you wouldn't hear anything when I play. But you do hear something. And to be honest, both normal polarity and reverse polarity doesn't sound great together. Again, two amps that are the exact same stacked on top of each other should sound bigger and beefier. And because of the little comb filtering happening, you're not going to get that cancellation effect. Now, let's try this. Let's record it in my DAW and then watch the waveforms and see which one is more delayed from the other, and see if we line them up, if we can't get them to perfectly cancel out. So let's just record something simple and percussive. Now again, when we go into Logic and we line those up, the one with the reverse polarity should completely cancel itself out if the gain structuring is exactly the same on both pedals. We're going to find out. Okay, so now we're in Logic and we have our waveforms, and let's listen to them. Okay, obviously just a little bit of comb filtering going on, so let's zoom it way in and see kind of how bad we are here. So that's a pretty clear view. So you can see that the dip right there does not match up with the dip right there. Now, surprisingly, TONEX ONE is the one with less latency because it's ahead of the big box TONEX. I would have thought probably it would have been reversed, but it's probably good news for a lot of you guys who care about latency and stuff like that, that whatever is going on inside of TONEX ONE is actually a little bit faster than big box TONEX. So the question becomes, if we line these perfectly up, will the null test work? And so let's try to line them up as best as we can, kind of find a common point, maybe right where it crosses the midline right here on both. Zoom in as much as I can. I think that's as close as you're going to get. Okay, so let's see how they sound now. Sounds a bit fuller. Now, it shouldn't sound like anything if they were exactly the same on this example. Actually, that's pretty darn good. To be totally honest, I've done this test several times before hitting record, but this particular test, I think I lined it up a little bit better. And I really think the only difference you're hearing is probably the little bit of like the input trim difference, the gain difference, because it's almost totally silent compared to this. So I think it's safe to say that TONEX ONE just sounds exactly the same as big box TONEX. Maybe somebody out there is going to do a way more scientific test, but I hope this just goes to show that we're not losing anything by going to the smaller enclosure. So now let's chat through how to operate TONEX ONE and how to control the subparameters and explain and explore the different modes that you can enter into. Now, by default, when you first power it up, it is kind of the default standard mode, if you will, and the knobs are pretty self-explanatory. The main knob is the preset volume, and then you have bass, middle, and treble, and those are the EQ controls. Now, if you press this Alt button once, you're in Alt mode, which now controls the gate, the compressor, and the reverb, and also the preset gain accordingly. And when you're done making those adjustments, you can press Alt again to go back to standard mode. Now, I believe by default, TONEX ONE loads up in dual mode, which means that if you press the foot switch, it alternates between two presets that you've selected. In my case, I'm alternating between my AC30 amp capture and my Prosonic amp capture. This works great too if you want to load in two separate overdrive captures, like I have here. I have a capture of my daily driver, overdrive, and my Benson Preamp, and so just by the press of a button, I can go from my first stage drive to my second stage drive. Or in a similar way, I can load up my AC30 clean capture, which is represented by a 1 right here, and then my AC30 edge of breakup capture, which is represented by the 2 right there, and then have the ability to cycle between a clean and slightly overdriven amp. To be able to switch TONEX ONE to STOMP mode and to control other global parameters, you want to enter Global Setup, and you do that by holding the Alt button for 6 seconds. After a first set of blinking lights, you'll hold it a little bit longer, and then you'll see the bass and mid knobs change color, and likely the treble knob, especially if you don't have anything plugged in and you're not playing, will remain unlit until you plug something in, because that will adjust your input trim. I'll explain that in a moment. If the Alt LED is colored blue, you know you're in Global Setup. But when you're in Global Setup, the bass knob controls either dual mode or stomp mode. If you turn the bass knob all the way to the left, it's green, and that means you're in dual mode. If you turn it all the way to the right, it turns amber, which means you're in stomp mode. In stomp mode, the pedal operates like a standard stomp box. Hitting the switch engages the pedal, hitting the switch again bypasses the pedal. But let's go back to Global Setup to discuss the other global parameters. Now, like I mentioned, the bass knob controls whether it's in dual mode or stomp mode. The mid knob then controls whether the cab is active when it's turned all the way to the left. If it's red, it means the cab is bypassed globally, and that goes for all presets. So in my case, I want the cab active. In Global Setup, the treble knob controls the input trim. You can play your instrument and set the input trim accordingly. A dimly lit green LED means the signal is a little too low, and a red LED means the signal is clipping. You can dial in the input trim much like you did the big box Tonex pedal to suit your tastes and your rig. The last parameter in Global Setup that we haven't talked about yet is the main volume knob. In Global Setup, this controls the global volume, affecting the volume of the entire pedal for all presets. To exit the Global Setup, press the switch. The next mode we need to talk about is browsing mode. To enter browsing mode, hit the Alt and the switch simultaneously. You'll know you're in browsing mode when the Alt LED turns purple. When you first enter browsing mode, the LED that is blinking is the LED that is active. The treble knob represents the preset loaded in stomp mode. The bass knob represents the preset loaded in dual mode A. And the mid knob represents the preset loaded in dual mode B. Since TONEX ONE can store 20 different presets, you can select which preset is loaded into each slot. So let's toggle to dual mode A. With the bass knob blinking, I can now select which preset is active. Watch as I turn this knob. Both the color of the LED and the preset is being changed as I cycle through my 20 different preset options. If I want to adjust which preset is in dual mode B, again I hit the switch and adjust the mid knob. Likewise, if I'm in stomp mode, I can hit the switch again and control my treble knob to cycle through my 20 available presets. If you'd like to change the color on any of these, it's very simple. Just come into the software, click the LED button, and change the color. You can also do that for any of the presets loaded in the library. When overwriting a preset, the LED color for that particular slot number will stay the same. For example, if I replace this Jump Angel with my AC30, the yellow LEDs will stay yellow. This is helpful, for example, if you would like to keep the colors consistent between the preset numbers. For example, if I wanted to make these the colors of the rainbow, I could make preset 1 red, preset 2 orange, preset 3 yellow, preset 4 green, preset 5 blue, and so on, just so you know which preset number you're selecting. But obviously you can organize these colors however makes sense to you. While you're in browsing mode, you can adjust volume and gain on those presets if you would like. Adjust volume by simply adjusting this big knob. Press Alt. If Alt is blinking, you are then adjusting gain on the preset that is blinking. Press Alt again. Press the switch to cycle to preset B. You can then adjust volume and gain on that preset from that spot. A little trick with this is you can actually stay in browsing mode and cycle between 3 different presets live. So for example, if I wanted to load my daily driver in dual mode A, my Benson Preamp in dual mode B, and my Aspen Overdrive in the STOMP mode, now when I'm in browsing mode, I can select between the daily driver, the Benson Preamp, and the Aspen Overdrive. To exit browsing mode, hit Switch and Alt at the same time again. Because TONEX ONE operates in an auto-save manner in which any parameter tweak is saved automatically, they did include a safe mode, which is really helpful if you want to lock your settings into place without fear of bumping them. You can access safe mode by holding down the Alt button for 3 seconds. You know safe mode has been applied when the LEDs flash 3 times. Then when you try to change a parameter, the LEDs blink again, reminding you that you're in safe mode. None of the changes you just tried to make will apply to the preset. This is extremely effective and helpful if you're mounting a couple of these underneath a board, for example, and you don't want it to get bumped by anything else. Do know the main switch still works in safe mode, which allows you to switch between 2 presets if you're in dual mode, or turn the pedal on and off in STOMP mode. The other great thing you might be wondering, what happens if I power down the pedal and apply power again? Will it remain in safe mode? And I'm glad to tell you that the answer is yes. Even on power cycles, when you repower the pedal, it is still in safe mode. Again, when mounting this underneath the pedal board, this is extremely helpful. The last mode to talk about is tuning mode, and you access tuning mode by holding down the main foot switch for a couple seconds. You'll know you're in tuning mode when the Alt LED starts to blink and it turns shell pink. When tuning, a flat note will appear on the bass LED. When it's perfectly in tune, it'll be green in the mid LED, and when it's too sharp, it'll be red on the treble LED. When you're in tuning mode, you can determine whether the pedal passes signal through or mutes that signal. You switch those 2 tuning modes by pressing the Alt button. Though there's no visual indication you switched modes, you'll obviously hear a signal coming through or you won't. To exit the tuner, hit the switch again. If you have more than one TONEX device plugged into a USB hub at the same time, you can select which device you're working with by clicking this drop-down arrow in the LIBRARIAN. As you can see, I have 2 big box TONEX pedals connected and 2 TONEX ONE pedals connected at the same time. It simply needs a little moment to sync before you can edit the new device. All right, some final words. Should you buy this? I know this may not apply to everyone watching, but if you are a follower of Jesus, as with any new piece of gear, just make sure to ask yourself a few questions first. Is this a need or is this a want? Do I want it just because it's new? Am I already content and feel that I'm already reaching excellence in my craft without this piece of gear? That's a good question to ask yourself. Have I been faithful with all the gear I already own? Have I learned all of it fully before trying new things? Have I been faithful with the financial resources that I've been given? Have I given back to the church, or have I helped those in need first? Or will I have to go into debt or borrow money to buy this? Listen, I love gear, okay? And admittedly, I have a lot of it because of what I do. So these are just some questions I have to ask myself on a regular basis to keep me in check. Take it or leave it. But listen, TONEX ONE for many of us may actually minimize and simplify our rigs while not sacrificing excellent tone, which is important because I believe in excellence. In fact, I believe excellence is good stewardship. And the truth is, TONEX ONE comes in at a price point that's much lower than most other gear that can do these kinds of things. So I'd imagine for many of you, this is going to be a solid investment for your tone, actually saving you money while increasing the quality of your tone. So I do imagine for many of us, it's going to be a hard one to pass up, and it's a piece of gear that for me makes a lot of sense, and I'm really excited to get it on my board. But thanks for listening all the way to the end, and again, do the like and subscribe thing, and check out the Tone Shepherd on Insta and my website, and stay tuned for more videos and demos and captures for the TONEX. Be blessed, stay connected, and I'll see you in the next video.